And we are live. Hello. Happy Tuesday. This is Shera Sever with Igniting the Spark and welcoming you to episode 3 of Bridging the Human Divide. Normally I would be doing this on Wednesday mornings, but tomorrow's my birthday. So I decided to do the recording today with our very special guest, Charlie Rebich. And Charlie today is going to be speaking with me about his process and practices of bridging the human divide in a very special process of depolarization. Actually, Charlie is a mindfulness and communications coach, and he brings a unique background of over 20 years of experience in conflict resolution and mindfulness training, along with many years of sales training experience. In these times of turmoil, Charlie helps activists, families, and communities communicate more effectively, deepen relationships, heals divides, and creates innovative outcomes. Charlie has workshops that he offers online and locally, and that information can be found at beyondpolarization.com. And welcome and good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Shera. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful to have you here finally. I've been wanting to find a way where we could collaborate simply because of our shared values and our work in the world with organizations and communities, and just at a very deep heart level of just a longing to find the ways where we can meet each other, share the commonalities, listen to the opportunities, the pain points, the conflict, and find ways to really bring in the healing salve, if you will, so that we really can move forward in our relationships, as a community, as a species. And I've just always admired your ongoing commitment to that, Charlie. I really respect you for that. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about, your work in the world, the successes you have had with your process. And first question I have for you is just really simply, what inspired you to become part of the conversation?
Oh, thank you, Shera. Well, first of all, happy birthday. I feel honored to get to do this on your day before your birthday.
Yeah.
And I just feel similarly to that appreciation for you and respect for knowing you for years, your care and your passion and your commitment to doing this work and working with individuals and communities and organizations on their leadership and their communication skills. And we've always held such a similar strain in that work and that value. So it's really an honor to be here with you and get to share, talk, have this conversation. That was a big part of my inspiration, wanting to do this with you. And also, I think just that passion of this moment right now, where things are so heated, more heated than they've seemingly maybe ever been, or at least in a long time. We go through, I think, phases in our history of these really polarized, intense moments. And this is one of those big moments. And also a really big opportunity. And I think that's what's inspired me over all the many years, is feeling this sense of opportunity that's in the world right now to create change and create a major changes in impacts in our society, and how we consider ourselves and each other, how we respect ourselves and each other's, our values. And that's really kind of what got me, it's been driving me, talk more about it, but, getting me into this conversation.
Yeah, I share that passion so much about the opportunity. What's also interesting is a lot of people in my audience know I've changed landscapes radically in the last year plus, which also inspired me to do this series. So having conversations with individuals and communities that are very, very different from um, my comfort zone and the bubble that I have been so actively involved in for many, many years, where change is looked upon as opportunity and conflict is looked upon as creativity and as a chance to deepen connection rather than to create more separation. I'm just curious, what do you think is the root cause, Charlie, of the very obvious divides that we are experience in the country, in our communities, and it does have that trickle down effect or that ripple effect, if you will, all the way into our personal relationships. Just what is the root cause of all of this?
Such a good question, right? I think it's really a deep question too. I was thinking about it this morning, looking at your questions and reflecting a bit, and echoing a bit what you just said. That I love the way you just framed conflict, the opportunity of conflict. And sometimes I think of conflict. I've told this in courses that it's change wanting to happen. It's change and growth wanting to happen. It's change and growth wanting to happen in the individuals and the individuals involved, and collectively in the group. And I think that's what speaks to why there's such an immense polarization and divide right now. Is there's a lot of change that is wanting to happen right now. There's a lot of growth, a lot of evolution, a lot of momentum that wants to happen in society right now. And these are some of my beliefs around change and history and spirituality, that there's this ongoing evolution and impulse that happens inside us, inside all of us, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, but there's just this great energy and momentum that wants us all to grow and expand our hearts and expand our capacities and expand our love and expand who we are as beings on this planet. And this has been going on for all of human history. But there's these moments where it just gets really intense, that the change that's want to happen, where sometimes where the old systems, the old beliefs, the old patterns, they're just not working anymore, and there's something new that wants to emerge and be seen. And when that happens, it naturally creates tension and conflict, and it raises all of our beliefs, all of our ideas, all of our prejudices, all of our biases, all that we hold on to. As human beings, we kind of construct belief systems about how the world is and how it's supposed to be, and we're influenced by the outside, by media and politicians and sources that influence our beliefs and our thinking. And when those beliefs and ideas come into conflict, we have conflict. So that I think is the source of it. Yeah,
Exactly. I love how you said it hasn't been framed that way by previous interviewers, although we seem to come to some similar solutions through our ways and our systems. But I loved how you said that there's a change that wants to emerge. I mean, there's a birth happening, and as we all know, the birth process is messy, it's bloody, it's painful. It requires a deep amount of patience as well. And I'm sensing too that what's causing the divide is just like you said, Charlie. It's like not wanting to let go of what we're used to. That can be individually, collectively, belief systems that are no longer serving life, serving growth, serving health. So I think that's a really good point. What's causing the divide at the level, the intensity that we're experiencing it? I think you really hit the target there with that there's a fear, there's a resistance to we can't do it this way, or I've actually, there's people that they believe that they don't want a change. They're very happy with the status quo. And I have found the divide being for those of us that believe that the change is needed, right? And and those are our beliefs, and see that
Right.
changes are needed, and others are not believing that a change is needed. And I think that's, that's where the polarization, or a big part of the polarization, is is multiplying and
Yeah.
growing and expanding. So,
Yeah.
our topic is Beyond Polarization, which is the name of your consulting service.
Mhm.
And I just would love you to talk a little bit about, what inspired you to create the service Beyond Polarization, and then a little bit of history about the work that you have done specifically with families, with this, our first circle of connection and relationship, and any work that you've done for community organizations. Just how are you how are you going in and doing the
Mm.
depolarization work?
Okay, great. Thanks, Shara. So, um, I like to start. Maybe I go back a bit in history. So,
Yeah, let's
and
do
I thought
some
about like
history.
what really has driven me for so much, really going back my adult life. Is I grew up in Berkeley in the late '70s, early '80s, and I came from a family that was a divorced parents. And one parent, and they divorced. They were from the Midwest, and they moved to California in the early '70s. And my parents, they kind of followed that California dream, moving out to California. And my dad became pretty successful in business and finance, and kind of went this route of joining a country club and becoming more conservative, always kind of conservative, libertarian. And my mother went through this transformation where she became more liberal, more hippie, and there was this real divergence in my family. And my parents separated, and I ended up moving to Berkeley with my mom, and I grew up mostly in Berkeley, California, real close here. And I think this has been very personal for me because this is like almost like a core wound for me. This split in my parents and my family. And I felt sometimes like I had one foot here in my mom's world and one foot here in my dad's world. And growing up in Berkeley in the '80s, this was the time of Reagan. And I remember the protests about Reagan and people upset about Reagan. And there was part of me that just kind of went, this is all really messed up. Like there's got to be a way to figure this out. And I remember pretty quickly I've been more liberal in my views for sure, and held that kind of those values pretty strongly through my life. And there's also been the part of me that's always just wanted to be real and be authentic and be what is a way that actually can bridge these sometimes in seemingly unbridgeable divides. That's why I called it beyond polarization, and to get kind of deeper into human connection and find that there's kind of a conservative and liberal inside of all of us, and how do we connect with those core values, core feelings, core needs. And that's what got me going on my journey. And in college, I learned about mediation. I was studying to go to law school. I thought I wanted to go in politics, and I kind of saw the conflict based process of the legal system as not being very helpful in a lot of cases. And I learned about mediation, and then I got into meditation at the same time, learned about that, and started practicing and became a volunteer mediator. And then over the years, I also started doing mediations, and then I got into sales for a long time as a career because I couldn't make enough money in mediation. And then I learned a lot of these skills in sales as well too, and realized, okay, often when you're trying to persuade somebody, you need to learn how to listen to them. You need to understand their feelings. You need to understand their needs. You need to understand their pains. You need to understand their worries. And then you can really connect with that person and help solve their problems. That's what a really great salesperson does. And in a mediation, it became the same skills of listening, um, rapport building, appreciation, and that's how I got going with it. And then I learned some of the skills that I use now today with families, which is around active listening. I use a lot of nonviolent communication, the skills from a practice called nonviolent communication, which probably I know you're aware of, and probably a lot of listeners are as well too, have heard of. but it's a way of creating a container for a conversation. This is how I kind of think about what I teach, how you create a container for a great conversation to happen. That's creating respect, safety, trust, appreciation, a framework for how you want to talk about a particular difficult topic, then going into listening, active listening, questions, some of the nonviolent communication skills, and then finally to requests and solutions. And that's kind of, I
Yeah,
think, that's art. And that's basically how I've done it, and a
yeah.
little bit about what got me into it.
Yeah, we'll do a little bit more because I want to. I've seen you in action in several times with some of the small groups that you have led, but just want to kind of review what you said. First of all, sharing your personal story. I didn't know that piece about you, about the family piece. So, that just reminds me that I can go into the healing domain. The best healers are the wounded healers. The best healers are those that have had the actual experience. The best business consultants or business coaches are those that have had multiple businesses and multiple experiments, some of them not being so successful. So again, I think that those of us that are involved in mediation, I'm also a community certified community mediator, and I've done a lot of work with Marshall's MVC model, of course. I think those of us that have had the conflicts in our own life, in our own relationships, and go and seek out these tools of transformation really are the most effective in the work, because it's like it's the core of our being, it's our essence, it's our mission, it's our purpose. And I really feel that from you, like there was this this dissonance that occurred for you, and it's like, how do I go about solving this? So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that, hearing that story. I think it gives us more credibility, in the work that we do in the world when we actually have experienced the transformation ourselves. So let's talk a little bit more about how you use some of these tools, in your own practices and in your coaching, consulting, and uh, actually, I just want to back up for a moment. I also like that analogy you made with the sales environment, because
Mm.
sales is creating a relationship, creating a connection, creating trust, creating safety with the individuals that we are there actually to provide a service
Mm-hmm.
for, a solution for. And again, sales is not pushing something onto somebody that doesn't need that. And we genuinely care about the people that we serve in sales.
Yeah.
And I think you really described that well too.
Yeah. Can I have one
Um,
point about that?
yeah, go ahead.
So it's and then in the work I do, and this is the sweet spot that I'm always playing with. And I mean, and is in these times, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, about the intense polarization and sometimes the fear that can come up around these conversations, and the dissonance you mentioned is because I think right now a lot of us care very deeply about what's happening in our beliefs and what's going on in the world. And in mediation, as mediators, sometimes we're here to resolve conflict, but as a salesperson, I also really want to honor and value the beliefs that people have for change to also happen. So I don't want to take steam out of that passion that's also there, because there's a lot in there. There's a lot that's really important. And I learned that in sales, which was really a challenge in sales, is because in sales you have a very specific goal. I mean, you are trying to get that sale or get that deal, and that's what turns off a lot of people to salespeople. It's just challenge because it really is that drive. And the best salespeople I've seen, and I wasn't always the best salesperson. I learned how to become a really good salesperson, but they have that drive. And it's that sweet spot of being really skilled at persuading somebody, while also really deeply listening and empathizing and understanding and uncovering needs and pain points and things that the customer might have that they might not even realize that's going on for them. And that's also what I find is oftentimes happening in conflict, like around politics, is there's all these needs and all these things that are being stirred up by the polarization and the conflicts and the communication and the beliefs and the ideas, and we don't even realize it. And we're up here fighting at this level of, all our competing ideas and beliefs. But when we get underneath and have that kind of great conversation that can be really vulnerable and courageous, then it gets to surface those kind of needs, and then the new solutions can kind of start. So I didn't want, and it's a sweet spot in here. I never talked about, this thing about like really being effective in communication. Like sometimes mediators, I think we can be like, oh, we're just gonna, it's like a passive thing, or we're gonna try to compromise or things like that in the conflict. It's not that either. It really holds this polarity of the intensity of what wants to happen and the kind of the connection and the soft skills.
I really like that, Charlie. I want to dive in a little bit deeper into the listening process, because we're taught from a very early age the value and importance of listening. And as adults, I'm just wondering how did that skill get transferred to this time? For me, there's always been there's a deep connection or a deep relatedness as well to mindfulness, which you and I have both been involved with as well, mindfulness practices for a number of years, and listening. And I just recently completed this European-based training. It's called The Art of Participatory Leadership, and it uses conversation cafes and the art of hosting. And we did it online for the first time. So it was very interesting to transfer some of these listening skills in this emergence process. Like what is emerging in the silence, right? What's the solution that's coming out of the silence? What's not being said that could actually be a piece to the depolarization, if you will. What I'm curious about is, because I know you've done a lot of work in this, just do you have some tips for like creating the space where there is deep and active listening occurring, and how would I know that that's happening?
Well, I think that such great. I love this stuff, Shera. I love everything you shared with that too, about the emerging from the silence or the space. It takes practice to do this, because it takes a trust, I think, in the process. So we need to learn the process, how to do these kind of conversations, and then to trust in them, so that we can actually kind of trust in that silence sometimes for something to emerge, because I think that's part of the trick, right? And like you're saying, so how up front, what I was saying over here in this, kind of creating the container, like it's really about, it's an art. It's an art, and their skills to it, of how to create a great container for that conversation to happen. And it's like an invitation. So in sales, they actually call this the upfront contract that you establish with a client. It's kind of like why we're here, what we want to talk about, why I care about you. And for me, what I talk is usually the creating container can be a way of kind of, creating some kind of like guidelines about how we want to have the conversation. And that's the things you're talking to about, like the active listening, and maybe like setting like, if you want to go back and forth, and how to do a little active listening, because sometimes you have to kind of coach the other person that you're inviting into this conversation. But it's all, for me, founded on appreciation and respect and love, really. That I've just got to show this person when I want to have this conversation, and it can be a little scary for me. That's why I say courage, which is that word, core, coming from the French word for the heart, of having the courage to say, hey, I'd like to have this conversation with you, being authentic. This is a little challenging for me. It could be even a little scary for me, but I care about you. I care so much about our relationship. I care about, we've worked together, build things that build appreciation and builds rapport. And then can say, and I'd like to be able to have a conversation and ask some questions and be able to try to understand each other better.
That's great.
How
I
does
mean,
that sound to you?
just that introduction. In fact, I think it's worth repeating, because this to me is a golden nugget that anybody can put into action in our next conversation, actually. And so just, I love the way you said it. Just say it again, that I heard that we want to create a sense of respect, appreciation, and care.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just repeat that again,
And
Charlie. It was
I
really
really, and
strong.
love. I mean, it really is. It's really kind of like, because we care because we love, right? We care because we love, like we get, our deep values or needs. If we're upset, it's because they're feeling threatened in some way, right? So, and we care enough about this person, even if we have a disagreement with them, that we wanna work it out, right? And even if this person, and probably this person does too, right? So if we create that amount of care and respect and appreciation, and it can be just like you said, like we're just framing it that way, like, hey, I want to have a conversation because I care. I mean, I'm going to, you may not say love, but because I care about you, like what do I care about with this person? Why do I really care about them? And want to have this conversation with them as a framing.
So
Yeah.
that's great. Let's do a little role play, because we had actually talked about that, which was actually one of the reasons also why I invited you to be part of the Bridging the Divide series. And I'm going to make myself very vulnerable right now for those that will be listening to this in the future. But I had mentioned to you that I've been part of a women's group now for 3 years, and now we're virtual, of course. But I'm going to call her my mentor. I mean, the woman that one of the women I have respected the most in the group, and that I asked her to mentor me on some specific practices that group is doing. And she's been a transformative sister for me, a real ally. And recently, in our most recent conversation, I sort of sensed it before, but it came out really strongly this last time, that she has gone to, in her political beliefs, she has gone to a side that I can't support, and I can't support. So it's really, it's not that I can't support her. It's just it's like I didn't even know what to say. So in our last conversation, when she started sharing information with me, that none of it that I agreed with, but because I respect our relationship so much, I didn't say anything. I just listened. I didn't say a word. And I think finally I just said, well, I'll have to check some of those things out. I didn't try and present my position or what I thought was right. And that, I felt like I was out of integrity with myself as a result of that. I went back to not exercising my voice, and that didn't feel good for me. So this is, yeah, my guess is that there are other people that are listening or will be listening to this that may have a similar situation and are in a process of their own development and growth and consciousness, where they're beyond name calling, they're beyond passive aggressive behavior, they're beyond assumptions, and already at a state of curiosity is how I would frame that. But just, how do I engage in a conversation with this woman who I deeply love? And I want to continue to develop and nurture this relationship with her. I have a great deal of respect for her, but this is huge.
Yeah.
And I just, my heart's broken, actually. It's my heart's broken. And so just wondering if you want to role play, or if you have some suggestions, and then we could role play.
Yeah, maybe we could do a few tips and then see how that unfolds. I mean, first is just I can feel it in my heart, and I can feel that pain, right? Like, it's just exactly what we're talking about. And and I mean, I heard you described as well too, by not speaking, like that, it felt like you were not in integrity, right? And So, and it's intense. I think, part of it is to give people, to give us all some empathy. These are really intense times. And I feel too. And there's a lot of forces that are basically dividing us. And there's a lot of forces out there that are, I must say, almost purposely dividing us right now. And things have gotten so divided that on one side or the other, we're actually almost listening to two different news sources, two different spins, two complete different belief systems about what's going on, what's happening, and being spun up.
Yeah,
And
at
it makes it
least two. At least two.
at least, right.
Yeah.
I say at least, right. At least two. I think, right. I mean, there are multiple. Thank you. And so it gets really challenging sometimes, right? And we can, and it can get spun up into these belief systems really fast. So I think from what I found is the most effective is we can't have these intense sometimes, sometimes you can just launch into and have an intense conversation, but when it really is tender and matters and your relationship matters is to try to bring the conversation back down to the appreciation and care and slowing the whole thing down, because oftentimes what happens is these things build up really fast. Like it sounds like what you're talking about with your friend when she started talking about her belief systems, it was like a lot came at you, right? And so to kind of bring it all back and kind of with some framing, right? That the steps to kind of trying to build the container is like, hey, you just said a lot. I noticed. I got noticed speaking your own. I got I got upset, and there was a lot of information that you shared with me there. And what I would love to do is be able to slow this down and I'd love to be able to talk to you about some of these things. I don't know if we're going to be able to agree or not, but can we slow this thing down and maybe talk about a couple of things that in our differences that maybe we might find some common ground in.
Yeah, I really like that. And I want to preface that with what you said earlier is that, also start the conversation with how much I value the relationship, how much I value her, how much I appreciate, the connection. I think that piece is really important because what we're really talking about here right now in a polarization context is really how to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah,
and without name calling, without behaving in a passive aggressive way. And I think we all understand what that is, and doing one thing that is out of alignment with what you really want and need and haven't been able to make a request or ask for it. Mm-hmm. And or just assuming certain things about the other person's behavior. So those things hopefully we are beyond level one there with those things.
Right.
But that in itself is a whole workshop
right,
and seminar,
right.
And just how to get through the unconscious behaviors or the unconscious biases. But I think prefacing with that is good, really important. And then, because I am going to see her actually in person for the first time in a year. To start it and not trying to change her mind and not trying to change her beliefs. That's not my goal. But it is to have a conversation where I can also share some of my perspective and maybe ask the right questions to dive a little bit deeper as to how she arrived at some of the beliefs and conclusions that she has. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just one thing I wanted to just really highlight that you said there, I think is so important, is that you're not going into this to try to change her mind, change her beliefs. Because if we go in with that attitude and we're up here talking that, then it creates it's going to create resistance, right? So it's kind of like the main thing we want to try to do again with what I sometimes the care, the appreciation, the respect, and the other R that I like to throw in there is keep it real, is like to try to come down to her, sometimes say, this is a big one, is because this oftentimes happens, is we kind of, it's almost like our programming comes up about all our, like what we think, about certain ideas, and is like, hey, I don't really, I know there's like, we could talk on this level of policy and all that stuff, but that doesn't really matter to me. That just feels like it's a whole bunch of ideas. What I really care about, because you're establishing this care with this person, is why do you care about some of these things? Why do you care about some of these issues so strongly? If it's, if it's immigration, or if it's around um, Black Lives Matter, or, and to really get on that level, this is where we can start to bring in the nonviolent communication, where we're trying to get really to this person to understand what their feelings are, and then their needs, like why does it feel so important to them, and why this belief and this idea is so important to them. And then we start to, now we're getting a little more vulnerable, and we're kind of getting underneath a little bit, and we're getting a little bit more real too, like in that sense with them.
Yeah, and I will do that. And I think I've sort of hinted around that just with listening, just
Yes.
by listening to what's important to her. So I understand that freedom is very important to her, and or her perception of freedom is very important. Keeping, closer, the status quo is important to her too. I've heard that in her conversation. And again, for me, it's also about, but how can I also share what's important to me? I could ask her, she's got very good communication skills as well. I could ask her, are you interested in hearing what I believe, or what my perspective is? Would you recommend doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so this is the part where I think too, which is calling for courage. And in that courage, it's really honoring, like I feel from you, like that your ideas and opinions and perspective really matters too. And so while it's really important to be able to listen to this person, to ask them questions, to understand their feelings, understand their needs, to really say, hey, I really respect all that, and I really want to understand, I'd really like talking about it, and I'd really like to share why some of these things are important to me as well too. Would you also be open to listening to that?
Mm-hmm.
So that, like, again, so that we're not being a pushover to somebody like that. Because
Right.
sometimes people can just throw their stuff at us, and almost like a bully, right? And so there's that courage, that's the yes and in here, to really own your value, and the value of your needs, and the value of your expression, to be able to express and share those as well too, so that we can actually meet in a place of like, okay, now we can have a real caring discussion. We're both loving and honest and safe, and that we can actually hear each other a little bit. That's my
Yeah.
thing.
Do you have, thank you very much. And I am the kind of person, well, when I believe really strongly in something, and it's an absolute injustice, unethical, um, I will speak up.
Yeah,
And those that know me know that I will speak up.
absolutely.
But when it's, when it's the relationships is threatened, that's when I become, surprisingly meek. And again, losing my voice, and I don't want to encourage anyone to lose their voice. So it's
Oh,
more about, really finding that common ground, because I am a little afraid to get into the discussion, and I'm not sure. My outcome is just to hear what she has to say, and also for her to hear what I have to say, without um, loosening the threads of our connection. I don't, I want her to continue to know that. I'm wondering if you have any success stories, excuse
hmm.
me, just with clients that you've worked with, going beyond polarization. Just could be anything that, I know that you've been doing some work recently with
Yeah,
some people in your community. Is there anything you'd want to share? Just
yeah,
what the
sure. And I'd be happy to
situation
share that.
was,
And
and
yeah, I'd be
yeah,
happy to share that. And
go for
I
it.
want to speak. I just felt like you were really vulnerable there, Shera, and I really want to acknowledge it and appreciate it, because I think all of us feel this when it's something, a relationship we really care about too. And this is the courage. I really, I really want to speak. It touches me so much. And because it's kind of like the courage to both stand up and speak when it can feel threatening to speak, and also to like own that, okay, that we can be, to have our passion. And because sometimes these relationships, they can make us so much anger, on the other side, either kind of more feel meek or and to hold that sweet spot where we're holding that energy that can be that passion without lashing out, and because sometimes someone's going to say something to us that's going to make us really angry as well too, without either collapsing or getting aggressive. And that's the mindfulness piece too. And I think all this work is a challenge for us, all of us. And I
Yeah,
just really
it
want to
is
acknowledge you
emotional
shared that in
intelligence
here
and
too.
absolutely the mindfulness piece. And
Yeah.
yeah, but that's
It,
that's for another conversation. But
that's the
it really is that to, just go back and do the check-in, right? Do a body scan. And it's like, okay, before I open my mouth, let me just make sure that I'm grounded and centered, clear on my intention, what I want to say. And if I am activated or triggered or angry, to claim that, but to do it in a way that's, like you said, emotionally intelligent or, kind and respectful. So
yeah.
go ahead. You were going to share a
Okay,
story.
well, I just want to thank you, and I just wanted. I'm glad we brought that because this is a big part of the work I do with people. Actually, is it's the inner work, and it's the work I do all the time as well too. Because sometimes I
Right.
stumble in conversations, and I've stumbled in a couple of conversations in race recently, and seen my own beliefs and things come up around that, and a lot of dismantling of beliefs around our history and things like that. And I got pretty triggered from it, and to hold that in a conversation, and to still be willing to show up for the conversation. So that's what that's a whole other thing we can talk about too. All the conversation happening now around race and racism around the country. Um,
That's a brave move
yeah,
to
well,
have those conversations on white fragility is, I think,
yeah,
is what you're
exactly. And
referring
all this
to.
is up too right now, right? So I've just named maybe one example. I mean, I've done
Okay.
mediations over many years, but I was just working with a fellow from the last series of workshops I did, and he's a real light. He's kind of a liberty theologian in Houston, Texas. Wonderful, wonderful spirit, man, and really cared so much about his passion and his convictions. And he's in an area that's where he has a lot of more conservative friends, and
Hmm.
he got into a pretty heated conversation with them around the president, and he felt very strongly that about some what he believed are injustices or things that the president's doing that he doesn't like. um, and we worked together. We did some mindfulness things together. We did some of this skill building together to build his skills on how to create the container and then do the active listening. And he met with I think one friend of his who is gets very passionate around some of the policies that President Trump is espousing, and created that container. We created the container of appreciation, just really telling how much he appreciates this person, how much he cares about him, and really wanting to have an honest conversation to understand why he cares about these particular policies and needs, and care about his feelings. And got into the conversation with him, asked him about it, and really, the guy had no one had ever framed a conversation to him like that before. And he opened up and he shared his beliefs around particular issues, and then he really got to what was underneath it was some just fears that he has around immigration, and fears, and some of it was actually really around his own life, things that were also going on that were all amplified from this. And then they could really meet in a place of talking about those things I think that we all share as human beings, just our dreams and our fears and our vulnerabilities. And he talked a lot about those kind of things. And it created a whole other level of connection and trust. And then he was able to talk a little bit about a couple of his ideas about why he believed what he did. And the man was able to listen to it. So they had a real
Wow.
meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
And they didn't
That's such
solve
a
everything.
heated
They didn't solve
topic
every
too.
problem. They didn't fix the country. They didn't, and I think, but they both saw each other a lot more clearly and deepened their relationship, and made a breakthrough
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
That's fabulous, Charlie. It's such a heated topic. And when you got down to the root cause, and the root cause was actually, a fear and going back to the basic needs that we learn about in nonviolent communication. I have a need for safety, right? I
Right.
have a need to be seen and heard and understood, all those things. So you know, I know that for myself and many others, and I've worked with this for decades, when I'm really passionate about something and I don't take the time to pause and listen, I can get very self-righteous, you know, and that's also, I think, a quality of beginning activism is you know, we're passionate, we're self-righteous, but it's a lot of tell, yell, and not listen and not use the mindfulness practices that, you know, you've been reminding us throughout this dialogue, how important mindfulness is, and you know, self-awareness before we go into dialogues that there's a lot of separation. So I want to just touch upon one more thing here, and that is, I mean, you've shared some really great tips, by the way. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you, and how you tied in mindfulness, sales, mediation, and
I know.
beyond depolarization. That was pretty magical weaving, and I really appreciate that. Um, Earlier we mentioned, or you mentioned, we touched upon empathy.
Mm.
And I just would love to hear from you. Um, how can we, in this, again, this very heated time that we're in, how can we practice self-empathy, especially when we notice that, "Oh, I don't agree," or this is, you know, this is insane, and calling names, and then empathy for others who, again, are, you know, are having different beliefs, views, and behaviors. Um, Personally, I believe that a lot of this begins with empathy. And so just like to hear what you have to say, like just some, you know, like
Mm.
emergency empathy tips.
Yeah, great. Such a great question, and yeah, just so huge, right, to talk about this and this whole conversation. And um, you know, empathy is care to me, and it's care of myself, and it's care of other people's, and that empathy is ability to feel. Really, it's the willingness to feel, and feel my own emotions, and feel others, right? And and being smart with that. But what kind of empathy, the first one layer of empathy I actually thought was because I work with activists as well too. And you mentioned, when we mentioned activists briefly, I love, I never want to discount someone's passion. Sometimes it can trigger me if that passion's coming is really strong. But that passion is it's a drive, right? And there is, and so I never want to discount that. And I think like it's important too. Um, but if we get so passionate that we lose the ability to actually be able to empathize with somebody else, then who we disagree with, then it becomes violent. So that's the growth challenge that I put towards activists, is to keep their empathy, even while feeling that intense passion, and for me
Mm-hmm.
as well, to really honor that intense passion. Um, and then empathy, like you just named, I mean, empathy is just, it's the ability to feel another person. And I think the biggest thing that gets for me with empathy is what we just talked about, is I think the biggest thing I got out of studying nonviolent communication was understanding that as human beings, we all have these needs, what they call needs, just basic needs, like you said, for safety, for security. We have, the needs of just basic needs like food, shelter, water, food, shelter. We have needs for self-expression. We have needs to be seen. We have this huge variety of needs, different level needs for connection, needs for autonomy, and everything we're doing is just trying to get those needs met. Our ideas and our ideologies are trying to satisfy those needs. Our strategies when we're trying to do things, particular, actions, and conflicts happen because we're using conflicting strategies to get needs met. So your strategies are going against my needs, and my strategies are going against your needs. So we're in conflict. But that empathy, what always grounds me in empathy, is knowing that I can have empathy for anybody, is that we're all trying to get those needs met, even the most dysfunctional person. And I know a lot, and we can look at others and say how crazy they are, or how effed up they are, or what, and even with that, that I know that everything is happening is that. And that level of empathy, I feel like creates possibility, creates any possibility, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, empathy is, empathy and mindfulness are very, to me, they're coming from the same trunk
mm,
of the tree. And,
mm,
um, when, with the emergence of Brene Brown's work some years ago, I think it's like 8 years ago now, I think when
mhm,
she first did her TED Talk, but,
mhm,
she was even brave enough to talk about empathy. And what I've noticed now, because I'm doing, like all of us, most of my work virtually, the conversations I'm having with organizational leaders now, their teams are dispersed,
mm,
and all working at home. Some with many with kids that they're homeschooling, and both spouses are at home, or there's not another spouse, whatever. Um, what some of the more what I call innovative organizations are doing now is actually bringing empathy up to the level of a number one leadership competency.
mm,
Trust was the conversation a decade ago, how to create trust in our organizations and work cultures. And now empathy is the conversation. And how do we create empathy online? How do we show this kind of empathy online? And this is my passion that I'm exploring right now. But I agree with you. It's like, first of all, self-empathy. Any feeling I have is okay, and explore why I'm feeling that, why I'm reacting, why I'm triggered, why I'm expansive, why I'm agreeing. And then go ahead and share that empathy, or extend, this is the mindfulness practice, extend that empathy to another. Why is he or she, what is he or she feeling? What is the, like you said, Charlie, what's the underlying need
mm,
um, that's being fulfilled or not fulfilled? And, what questions can I ask?
mm,
Because the answer is always in, the solution's always in the question. What
right.
questions can I ask so that I can create a place of safety and trust, so that we can, dive into the conversation. So
Oh,
yeah, I call it, I call it emergency empathy practices. Like, what can we do, like on the spot, right? To just um, calm the energies.
yeah. Oh, I just
Is
love what you
anything else
shared
you
so
wanted to
much.
add to that?
Oh, I just love so much what you shared there. The self empathy, the empathy beginning with self, and then also then with other as well too, right?
Right.
And like the start, like it starts from there. And I
This
just
is,
love
yeah,
how you shared as
go
that
ahead.
being a number one leadership quality, right? It's like a number one leadership quality,
Right.
especially right now.
So
So yeah,
that's fabulous, Charlie. This has been great. I really, really appreciate your sharing, and just, again, all the weaving that you have done. I want to remind people that if you want to get in touch with Charlie, learn more about his upcoming workshops and coaching, simply go to his website at beyondpolarization.com.
right.
And I want to invite listeners to tune in next Wednesday, when I'll be interviewing Jewel Bistrova, who is going to speak about a topic that I've never heard quite framed this way: regenerative somatics.
Mm,
And it's kind of a continuation of what you and I have done, Charlie, here, but she's taking it into the body now,
mm,
so that anyway, we'll see where that conversation goes. And she is also the founder of the Resiliency Network. You can find her on Facebook. And then the following week, August 12th, I'll be interviewing Anna Holub, who's a well-known mediator and now forgiveness expert. And she has um, published a book on forgiveness. And she also has done a lot of work in somatics. And um, I really think it's important that we move these conversations into, embody them as well. And this is, it's what mainstream has avoided for a very long time, is, embodying our practices. And I think that's what we're learning to do here as we bridge the human divide.
wonderful. Wow. So honored to be part of your series, Shara, and looking for
Yeah,
your other
yeah,
guests as
thank you.
well
It's
too.
really
And,
great to have you. And have a beautiful day, Charlie. And
thank
people
you.
can re-listen to this on Facebook, on my page, which is Igniting the Spark on Facebook, or my website, SherylSever.com. And we'll also have it posted on YouTube. My YouTube channel is also Igniting the Spark. So have a fabulous day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, so as we leave, what can I do to show empathy for myself, and what can I do to show empathy for others, so that we can bridge the human divide.
Maybe.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You're welcome.